The outpost stood at the edge of known space, a lonely settlement of metal walls and glowing towers pressed against a wide barren land. Ships came and went, most of them traders, explorers, or wanderers who needed fuel and repairs before continuing their long journeys. Beyond the landing pads stretched endless rocky plains, cracked by dry winds and glowing faintly under two pale moons. Among the people of the outpost lived Ryan, a mechanic who worked day and night among engines, wires, and tools. He was not a soldier, not a trader, not a leader. He was only a man with steady hands and a patient mind, fixing machines so that others could travel safely. His workshop sat close to the landing pads, a low building with a wide roof and doors large enough to roll in small ships for repairs. Ryan was known by many pilots. Some called him quiet, some called him stubborn, but all respected his skill. He could take apart a cracked engine, replace burned wires, and bring it to life again even when others thought it useless. Yet despite his talent, his life was simple. He worked, he ate, and he slept. There was no great adventure in his days. But Ryan was not blind to the world beyond his tools. He had heard the voices in the market, the tales told by traders about the wild lands outside the outpost walls. Strange lights in the canyons at night. Creatures with wings that glowed in starlight. Shadows that moved faster than any wind. The people told these stories with both fear and wonder, for they believed something ancient lived in the valleys and mountains that the humans had not yet claimed. Ryan never spoke much of these tales. To him, they were only rumors meant to pass the time. Machines were real, machines were solid, machines could be understood. Legends, he thought, were only noise. Yet, when he worked alone at night and the winds howled through the metal walls, he sometimes paused and wondered if there was truth in those words. One evening, as the sky burned orange under a setting sun, Ryan closed the doors of his workshop after repairing a small cargo ship. He wiped oil from his hands and looked across the open plains. The silence of the outpost pressed around him. He heard the faint hum of generators, the distant calls of traders bargaining, and above all, the lonely cry of wind across the stone. It was in this quiet moment that he felt how small the colony truly was compared to the endless land around it. He walked to the edge of the landing pad and gazed toward the far horizon. The canyon lines glowed faintly as if the rocks themselves held a hidden fire. Many avoided those lands, for they said strange things lived there. Yet, in Ryan's eyes, it was not fear but mystery. A mystery too large to solve with tools or wires. Despite the rumors, Ryan's heart was steady. He cared little for danger, little for fear. His life was built on repair and patience. If others wished to chase legends, let them. His duty was here, where machines depended on him. Still, he could not deny the feeling that the outpost was only the beginning of something greater. As night fell, Ryan returned inside and lit the workshop lamps. Sparks danced as he tested a new scanner he had been repairing. The device hummed softly, showing life once more. He smiled faintly, pleased with his work. It was then, as the scanner flickered and caught a faint signal, that he leaned closer. The signal was weak, almost hidden, but it was real. It came from somewhere beyond the plains, beyond the canyons, in the direction of the lands most avoided. Ryan frowned, unsure. Was it a shipwreck? A lost beacon? Or perhaps one of the strange mysteries people whispered about? He did not yet know. For now, it was only a signal, and machines did not lie. In that moment, as the scanner pulsed again, Ryan's quiet life began to change. He did not yet see it, but the path before him was no longer one of simple repairs. The outpost, the legends, and the lonely mechanic would soon meet something far beyond all stories. The workshop was quiet except for the hum of the scanner. Ryan leaned over the device, his eyes fixed on the small flickering line that pulsed across the screen. It was faint, broken, but steady enough to prove that it was not just random noise. Something was out there, calling for help. He adjusted the dials carefully, narrowing the range until the signal grew stronger. The direction was clear toward the eastern canyons, far beyond the safe patrol routes. That area was spoken of in whispers by travelers. Some said they had seen lights moving across the canyon walls. Others said they had heard roars that shook the stone at night. The elders of the colony often warned that no one should go near the place. Ryan sat back, his hands resting on the table. He thought of ignoring it. After all, it was not his duty to chase signals into dangerous lands. He was a mechanic, not an explorer. But the thought of leaving it unanswered unsettled him. Someone, or something, was in trouble. Machines could be repaired, ships could be rebuilt, but lives were fragile. He knew this truth too well. The signal came again, weaker than before. If it was a ship, its power was failing. If it was a beacon, it might go silent at any moment. Ryan's chest tightened. He could not sit still. He packed a small bag with tools, a light, and a portable scanner. Then he went to the hangar, where an old rover rested in the shadows. The machine was simple, built for rough ground and heavy loads. Its engines were scratched and its paint faded, but Ryan kept it alive with careful work. Tonight, it would carry him beyond the walls. The outpost gates opened with a slow groan, and Ryan drove the rover out into the open plains. The night sky spread wide above him, filled with stars and the silver glow of the two moons. The wind carried dust across the ground, whispering against the rover's frame. Ryan drove in silence, following the signal's faint direction. Hours passed. The outpost lights faded behind him until they were only tiny sparks on the horizon. Ahead, the land rose into tall cliffs and deep cuts of stone. The scanner beeped more clearly now, guiding him forward. He slowed the rover as he entered the canyon mouth. The air grew cooler, and strange glowing plants clung to the rocks, lighting the path in soft green and blue. Ryan felt his heart beat faster. The stories spoke of these lights, how they shone like stars trapped in stone. The air itself seemed alive with quiet energy. He stopped the rover and stepped out, holding his lamp high. The signal was strongest here. He walked carefully along the rocky ground, the scanner in one hand and the lamp in the other. The sound of running water echoed faintly from deeper inside the canyon. Then he heard something else, a low cry, weak and trembling, almost like the whimper of a child. Ryan froze. He listened. The sound came again, softer this time, but filled with pain. He moved forward quickly, the light from his lamp sweeping across the canyon floor. At first, he saw only broken rocks and patches of glowing moss. Then his eyes caught movement near a cluster of stones. He stopped, his breath caught in his throat. There, tangled in strange metallic netting, was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its body was small, no larger than a dog, but its wings were wide and delicate, stretched like silver silk. Its scales were pale white, almost shining under the moonlight. Its eyes, large and glowing faintly blue, stared at him with fear and desperation. The creature struggled weakly against the net, but the metal cords dug deeper into its wings and legs. Each movement made its cry sharper, filled with pain. Ryan's mind raced. He knew what it was. He had heard the stories from traders who claimed to have seen them from a distance, dragons. Beings of fire and light, protectors of their own, feared and respected by many. Yet here before him was not a monster of legend but a small, wounded child. He knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible, his voice calm though the creature would not understand his words. Easy now. I am not here to harm you. The dragonling's eyes followed him closely, its body trembling. Ryan set down his lamp and pulled a tool from his bag. The net was not human design. It looked alien, built to trap and hold with energy lines that glowed faint red. He had never seen anything like it. But he knew metal, and he knew wires. He could cut it if he was careful. He worked slowly, cutting one line at a time. Each time the net loosened, the dragonling shifted, its wings twitching. At last, with one final cut, the net collapsed to the ground. The creature was free. It lay still for a moment, as if too weak to move. Then it stretched its wings and tried to rise, but one wing bent awkwardly. Ryan saw the injury, a joint twisted by the net. Without help, it would never fly. The dragonling looked at him again. There was no anger in its eyes, only exhaustion and a faint light of trust. Ryan felt a strange pull in his chest. He could not leave it here. He wrapped the small creature gently in a cloth from his bag, careful not to press its wing. The dragonling gave a soft chirp, a sound almost like thanks, and closed its eyes. Ryan carried it back to the rover, his mind full of questions but his heart certain of one thing. His life as a mechanic had just changed. What he held in his arms was no ordinary creature. It was something far greater, something that could alter the fate of the outpost, and perhaps even more. And he had chosen to save it. The rover rumbled softly as Ryan guided it back through the canyon. The pale creature lay wrapped in cloth beside him, its breathing shallow but steady. The glow of its scales painted the inside of the cabin with a faint silver light. Ryan kept glancing at it, his mind heavy with thoughts. He knew what he was carrying was no ordinary find. The dragonling was part of a species spoken of only in hushed voices. Entire fleets of traders avoided their nesting grounds, and colonies sent out warnings whenever sightings were made. Dragons were not seen as allies. They were feared, for their kind was known to strike without hesitation if threatened. And yet, Ryan had seen no monster. He had seen a fragile being, trapped and hurt, its cries filled not with anger but with pain. He remembered the way it looked at him when he cut the net, the way it gave that soft sound of trust when he carried it. That memory held his heart in silence. The rover climbed the rocky path out of the canyon. The stars above glimmered like tiny fires, and the outpost lights were still far away. Ryan thought of what would happen if he brought the creature openly through the gates. The guards would see it as a danger. The council would order it destroyed or forced away. People feared what they did not understand. He clenched the steering bar tighter. He could not let that happen. When he finally reached the outpost walls, he guided the rover along a side path instead of the main gate. There was an old service entrance near the workshops, rarely used except by maintenance crews. He tapped the code into the panel, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. The rover rolled through unseen. Inside his workshop, the lamps glowed softly. Ryan lifted the bundle from the seat and laid it carefully on a padded table where he usually repaired engines. The dragonling stirred, opening its glowing eyes. Its gaze swept the room, wide with wonder. Ryan spoke gently, even though the creature could not understand his words. "You are safe now. I will help you." He examined the injured wing more closely. The joint was swollen, twisted by the cruel net. If he did nothing, it would heal badly, leaving the dragon unable to fly. But if he worked carefully, he might set it right, the same way he repaired bent struts or misaligned parts of a ship. It was risky, but he could not turn away. Ryan fetched small braces and soft bands, tools he normally used for delicate machinery. His hands moved with patience, steady and precise. The dragonling tensed at first, letting out a faint whimper, but Ryan's calm presence kept it still. He set the wing, adjusted the brace, and wrapped it gently. When he finished, the wing rested in place, supported but no longer strained. The dragonling gave a quiet chirp, its eyes half closed with relief. Ryan felt warmth in his chest. For years, he had repaired machines. But tonight, he had repaired something alive. As hours passed, he stayed near, feeding the small creature drops of water and keeping it warm with a heated cloth. The dragonling responded slowly, its strength returning. At one point, it even stretched its neck toward him and pressed its head lightly against his hand. Ryan froze, surprised by the gesture. Then he let his hand rest there, feeling the strange smoothness of the glowing scales. It was a sign of trust. And in that moment, Ryan knew he had made his choice. Still, doubts whispered at the back of his mind. If the dragons learned that one of their young had been hurt, they would come searching. If they discovered humans were involved, their fury might fall upon the outpost. By saving this creature, he might have placed everyone in danger. But his heart refused to regret. He remembered the look in the dragonling's eyes when it lay trapped, helpless. He remembered the sound of its cries. No human could turn away from such suffering and remain human. Compassion was not weakness. It was the very thing that made humans different from the cold void of space. Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but at peace. He studied the dragonling sleeping under the lamp's warm glow. He thought of giving it a name. A name simple and fitting. After a moment, he whispered, "Snow." The creature stirred softly, as if it had heard. Ryan smiled faintly. Outside, the outpost continued its quiet life, unaware of the bond forming inside the mechanic's workshop. But deep in the wild lands, beyond the canyons, the skies were shifting. High above the mountains, massive wings spread against the starlight. The elders of the dragons were already searching, their senses sharp, their voices echoing through the night. The moment Ryan chose to save one fragile life, he unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would soon reach far beyond his workshop, far beyond the outpost. The human who lived in silence among machines had stepped into a story greater than himself. And though he did not yet see it, the dragons would not forget. The next morning, the suns rose slowly above the rocky horizon, painting the outpost in soft red and gold. The workshop was quiet, filled only with the faint ticking of cooling engines and the steady hum of a small heater. On the padded table, the dragonling stirred, blinking its pale blue eyes open. Its scales shimmered faintly in the new light, glowing like snow under dawn. Ryan had stayed awake most of the night, keeping watch. His tools were still scattered on the workbench, and his chair sat close to the creature. When the dragonling shifted, Ryan leaned forward quickly. "Easy now," he said softly, his voice calm. The dragonling tilted its head, staring at him. For a moment, neither moved. Then the small creature gave a faint chirp, a sound curious and light, as if testing the air. Ryan let out a quiet breath of relief. It was alive, and it was stronger than before. He placed a shallow dish of water nearby. The dragonling sniffed at it, then lowered its small mouth to drink. Ryan smiled faintly. He had repaired many machines, but never had he seen anything so strange, so alive, and yet so gentle. As the hours passed, the dragonling explored the table, tapping its claws softly against the surface. Its injured wing remained braced, but it stretched the other wing wide, showing the delicate silver membrane that caught the light like crystal. Ryan watched carefully, making sure it did not harm itself. He was surprised when the creature turned toward his tools. It nudged a small spanner with its nose, pushing it across the table. Then it chirped, as if proud of the act. Ryan raised his eyebrows. "You like tools, do you?" The dragonling pushed the spanner again, then tapped another tool, making a soft clink. Ryan chuckled quietly. "So, you are curious. Just like me." The creature's eyes glowed brighter, and for a strange moment, Ryan felt as if it truly understood his words. He reached out slowly, his hand steady. The dragonling sniffed his fingers, then pressed its head gently against his palm. A warmth spread through him, something deeper than simple kindness. This was not just an animal. This was something intelligent, aware, reaching out across the barrier between species. He whispered, "Snow. That will be your name." The dragonling gave a soft trill, as if answering. From that moment, Ryan knew the bond between them had begun. Over the next days, he kept Snow hidden in the workshop. He fed the dragonling carefully with what little food it would accept: drops of water, crushed fruits, and softened grains. Snow ate little but grew stronger each day. Its eyes followed Ryan constantly, watching him repair engines and weld panels. Sometimes it even tried to copy his movements, lifting a tool in its tiny claws or tapping wires as if inspecting them. At night, when the outpost was quiet, Snow rested close to him. The soft glow of its scales filled the workshop with a calm light, chasing away the darkness. Ryan often sat awake, listening to its gentle breathing, wondering how such a creature could inspire both fear and wonder in the galaxy. Yet he knew the danger was real. If the Council discovered Snow, they would never allow it to live among humans. And if the dragons discovered a human keeping one of their young, their wrath could fall upon the outpost. Still, Ryan could not turn away. The bond was too strong now. Snow trusted him, and in return, he felt a strange sense of duty, as if fate itself had placed this life in his hands. One evening, as he tightened a loose panel on a ship, Snow climbed down from the table and hopped onto the floor. It waddled awkwardly, its small claws clicking against the metal. Ryan turned quickly. "Careful." Snow ignored him and moved toward the glowing lamp. It studied the light with fascination, then gave a short chirp. Ryan knelt beside it, shaking his head with a faint smile. "You are not afraid of anything, are you?" Snow tilted its head and nudged his chest. For a moment, Ryan thought he heard something unspoken, a feeling that touched his mind. Not words, not clear, but a sense of connection, like a spark across the air. He blinked in surprise but said nothing. Perhaps it was his imagination. Or perhaps dragons had ways of speaking beyond sound. The days blended together, and the bond grew stronger. Ryan no longer saw himself as just a mechanic. He was a guardian now, keeping safe a life that carried mystery and power. Snow was more than a creature. Snow was a bridge between worlds. But far beyond the walls of the outpost, shadows moved in the sky. High above the canyons, great wings spread across the night. The elders of the dragons had not stopped their search. They could feel the call of their young, faint but clear, pulling them closer with each passing day. Ryan worked late into the night, unaware of how close that moment was. Snow lay curled beside him, glowing softly under the lamp. For now, the workshop was quiet, filled with warmth and trust. But soon, the skies above the outpost would shake with thunder and fire. And when that day came, the bond between a human mechanic and a young dragon would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. The suns rose slowly over the outpost, casting long shadows across the metal walls and landing pads. Inside the workshop, the air smelled faintly of oil and heated wires. Ryan sat on a chair beside the padded table, his eyes heavy from lack of sleep. He had stayed awake most of the night, watching over the small creature he had brought back from the canyon. The dragonling stirred under the warm cloth. Its pale scales caught the morning light, glowing faintly like snow under starlight. With a soft sound, it lifted its head and looked around the workshop. Ryan leaned forward quickly, his voice calm. "You are safe. No one will harm you here." The dragonling's blue eyes studied him. For a long moment, there was silence, then the creature gave a faint chirp. It was weak but curious. Ryan placed a shallow dish of water near its mouth. At first the dragonling hesitated, then lowered its head and drank slowly. Relief washed through Ryan. It was recovering, little by little. He sat back, studying the small being. Stories had always spoken of dragons as terrifying forces, but here was a fragile life no larger than a child's pet. Its injured wing rested in the brace he had made the night before. It moved carefully, testing its strength but not straining. Ryan smiled faintly. "You are stronger than you look." As the day passed, the dragonling grew more active. It crawled across the table, tapping its claws softly against the surface. Ryan worked on a broken engine nearby, but his eyes often drifted toward it. The creature seemed fascinated by his tools. It nudged a small wrench with its nose, pushing it across the table until it clattered against a bolt. Then it chirped, as if pleased by the sound. Ryan chuckled. "So you like noise?" The dragonling turned toward him, its eyes glowing brighter, and let out another sound. It was not angry. It was playful. Ryan's chest warmed at the sight. For the first time, he realized he was not just protecting it. He was sharing his world with it, and it was learning. That evening, when the outpost quieted, Ryan placed soft food near the creature. Pieces of fruit, crushed lightly, and warm water mixed with grains. The dragonling sniffed and ate slowly. When it finished, it moved closer to Ryan. He stayed still, not wanting to startle it. Then, to his surprise, the dragonling pressed its head against his hand. Ryan froze. The scales felt smooth, faintly warm under his palm. The creature gave a gentle trill, almost like a purr. Ryan whispered, "Snow. That will be your name." The dragonling blinked, as if listening, then rested against him. Ryan smiled. The name felt right, simple, and fitting for a creature with pale, glowing scales. Over the next few days, the bond between them deepened. Snow followed Ryan's movements with keen eyes. When he repaired engines, it sat nearby, watching every spark and turn of a wrench. Sometimes it tried to copy him, nudging tools or tapping wires with its small claws. Ryan laughed softly when it managed to lift a tiny bolt in its mouth and drop it beside him, as if offering help. At night, Snow curled near the heater, glowing faintly like a lantern in the dark. The workshop felt less empty now. Ryan often sat awake, listening to its soft breathing. A strange peace filled him, unlike anything he had felt before. But he also knew the danger of his choice. If the council discovered what he was hiding, they would not allow it to stay. They might see Snow as a threat and order it destroyed. And beyond that, the dragons themselves would one day come searching. If they learned a human had touched one of their young, the outpost could be at risk. Still, Ryan could not regret what he had done. Compassion was not weakness. It was strength. He had saved a life, and that life now trusted him. That trust was worth any danger. One evening, while he worked on a fuel cell, Snow climbed down from the table. Its movements were clumsy, but determined. It walked across the floor toward him and sat by his chair. Ryan looked down in surprise. "What are you doing here?" Snow tilted its head, eyes glowing. For a brief moment, Ryan felt something strange, like a spark in his mind. It was not words, not clear, but a feeling: warmth, curiosity, connection. He blinked, unsure if it was only his imagination. But when Snow leaned against his leg, he decided not to question it. He rested a hand gently on its back. The bond between them was real, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. In saving Snow, he had found something more than duty. He had found a friend. Outside, the sun sank below the horizon, and the canyons darkened. Far beyond the outpost, in the high skies above the wild lands, shadows moved. Great wings cut across the starlight, and deep voices rumbled through the air. The elders of the dragons had begun their search, their call reaching for the lost one. Inside the workshop, Ryan sat quietly with Snow beside him, unaware of how close that day was. For now, there was only trust, warmth, and the beginning of a bond that would soon be tested by fire and fate. The ground shook as the sky darkened above the outpost. Ryan stood at the edge of the workshop, holding Snow close. The pale dragonling's wings twitched nervously against his chest. The wind howled through the metal buildings, carrying the sound of enormous wings beating through the air. Shadows of massive shapes passed over the outpost, each one large enough to blot out the suns. Ryan's heart pounded. He had known this moment might come. The elders of the dragons had sensed Snow's absence and had flown across the plains with unmatched speed. They were here now, circling above, their glowing eyes scanning the ground. The colony trembled with fear, but Ryan remained still. He had no choice but to face them. The first of the dragons descended, landing with a ground-shaking thud near the main gate. Its scales gleamed deep blue and silver, and its eyes, glowing like embers, fixed on the small figure Ryan held. The air filled with a low, resonant roar that seemed to vibrate through the bones of every human in the colony. Ryan swallowed hard. He had repaired engines, navigated storms, and faced emergencies, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Still, he knew he could not show fear. Snow had trusted him, and he would not fail now. He stepped forward slowly, holding Snow high to show the elders that he meant no harm. The dragonling's tiny head peeked over his arm, its glowing eyes meeting the gaze of its kin. The largest of the dragons stepped forward, wings spread wide. Fire flickered at the edges of its mouth, a warning and a test. The heat radiated across the ground, but it did not touch Ryan. He stood firm, letting the creature see that he would not run. The elder's roar filled the air, challenging him. Yet Ryan remained calm. He spoke softly, even though the words were likely meaningless to the massive dragon. "I saved Snow because it was in pain. I did not take it. I did not harm it. I only helped." For a long moment, there was silence except for the beating of wings. Then the elder moved, circling around him slowly. The heat of its fire washed over him but did not burn. Ryan's eyes did not leave the dragon's face. He did not flinch. The other dragons circled as well, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The colony watched in fear and awe, unsure if they would witness fire and destruction or a miracle. Snow chirped softly, pressing against Ryan. It seemed to urge him on, its small presence a reminder that courage was not about size but choice. Ryan took a deep breath. He knew that actions spoke louder than words. He set Snow gently on the ground, stepping back to show trust. The baby dragon stretched its wings slightly, then moved closer to Ryan as if to show the elders that it trusted the human. The largest dragon leaned closer, flames licking the air around him. It sniffed, studied, and then stepped back, its massive head lowering slightly. A sound vibrated in the air, a deep, rumbling acknowledgement. The other dragons followed, lowering their heads, circling Snow and the human. Ryan watched, astonished. They were recognizing his choice. The dragons could sense the honesty in his actions, the courage in his heart, and the care he had shown for their young. Snow chirped again, a bright, clear sound, and hopped onto Ryan's shoulder. The glow of the baby dragon's scales seemed to shine brighter, filling the space between man and beast with light. The elders spread their wings wide, lifting slightly above the ground. Then, slowly, they descended closer to the outpost, not to attack, but to guard. Their presence was protective, powerful, and commanding. Ryan realized that his courage and compassion had earned something extraordinary. The colony erupted in cautious whispers. Humans had feared the dragons for generations, yet here they stood as guardians, not destroyers. The air vibrated with energy, a connection between species that had never existed before. Ryan felt a mixture of awe and relief. Snow's small head pressed against his neck, and he smiled softly. The dragons had judged him and had found him worthy. They would not harm the colony. They would not harm him. They were loyal now, not by force, but by recognition of his heart. He looked out across the plains beyond the outpost. Somewhere in the distance, more dragons might be searching, yet he knew they would come and see the same truth. One human had acted with care, and that choice had changed the balance of trust. Ryan knelt beside Snow, resting his hand gently on its glowing scales. "We did it," he whispered. The small creature chirped, pressing closer as if to echo his words. The elders lifted once more into the sky, circling above the colony before gliding back toward the distant mountains. Their wings cut through the air like living shadows. Their eyes never left Ryan or Snow, a silent promise of protection. For the first time, Ryan understood the power of his choice. Courage, compassion, and patience had bridged the gap between human and dragon. He had not fought them with weapons, and he had not run. He had faced them with heart and trust, and it had changed everything. The outpost began to breathe again, the human slowly stepping outside to look at the dragons above. Fear had been replaced by wonder. And at the center of it all, Ryan and Snow stood together, the unlikely pair that had earned the loyalty of creatures older and wiser than any human memory. The night fell, calm for the first time in weeks. The bond between Ryan and Snow was stronger than ever. The elders of the dragons were still nearby, watching, and the colony had witnessed the miracle that humans could inspire through simple courage. And Ryan realized that in saving Snow, he had not only protected one life, but he had gained allies that would forever watch over humanity. The dawn rose over the outpost with a soft golden light, painting the metal walls and landing pads in warmth. Ryan stood at the edge of the workshop, Snow perched carefully on his shoulder. The baby dragon's glow mixed with the sunlight, creating a faint halo of silver light. The air was calm, but Ryan could feel an unspoken presence surrounding the outpost. High above, the dragons circled in wide, graceful patterns. Their massive wings cut through the sky, shimmering in shades of silver, blue, and gold. The elders had returned after the night of the trial of fire, and they had brought more of their kind. One by one, smaller dragons emerged from the distant mountains, filling the sky with an incredible display of power and grace. The colony awoke slowly. Humans peeked from behind doors and windows, their eyes wide with awe and fear. They had feared the dragons for generations, believing them to be merciless. But now, watching them hover peacefully above the outpost, they realized that something extraordinary had happened. Ryan stepped forward carefully, his hands still resting on Snow. The baby dragon chirped softly, nuzzling his cheek, and Ryan smiled. Today was not a day for fear. Today was a day to witness the bond between humans and dragons. The largest elder dragon descended first, landing near the central courtyard. Its eyes glowed softly, watching Ryan and Snow with an intensity that was not threatening but protective. Slowly, the other dragons followed, forming a wide circle around the outpost. Their wings created shadows that stretched across the walls, and the ground trembled under their weight, yet they moved with careful control. Ryan took a deep breath. He realized that the dragons had recognized him, not as a threat, but as a friend. His choice to save Snow had proven his courage and compassion, and in return, they offered loyalty beyond any human expectation. Snow chirped again, flapping its small wings. The sound seemed to travel across the courtyard, and the dragons responded. Their heads lowered, and some even stepped closer to the humans without hesitation. It was a silent promise, a declaration that those who protected life and acted with heart were worthy of trust. The humans in the colony began to approach cautiously. Children peeked from behind walls, and adults stepped forward, still wary but filled with wonder. They watched as Ryan and Snow stood at the center of the dragon's formation, a bridge between two worlds. Ryan knelt and held out his hand. Snow hopped down, landing lightly, and the baby dragon's small wings brushed against his arm. He looked up at the elders and whispered softly, "Thank you for trusting me." The dragons responded with soft, rumbling sounds, a language of emotion rather than words. Their wings stretched wide, brushing the air, creating a gentle wind that cooled the courtyard. For the first time, humans could feel the strength and grace of these magnificent creatures without fear. Over the next hours, Ryan guided Snow and the dragons through the outpost. The baby dragon explored freely now, its trust in him complete. The elder dragons moved carefully among the buildings, showing the humans that they would not harm the colony. They circled above, their wings creating a canopy of protection. The colony slowly began to understand the importance of this bond. The dragons were not just creatures of legend. They were beings capable of deep understanding, and they had chosen to honor the courage and kindness of a single human. Ryan's actions had changed everything. By evening, the sky was filled with the dragon's presence. They flew together in formation, creating patterns that glowed faintly in the light of the setting suns. The humans watched in silence, or replacing fear. They realized that this alliance was a gift. Humanity had gained allies far stronger and wiser than themselves, not through force, but through the simple act of saving a life. Ryan stood beside Snow, feeling the warmth of the baby dragon against his shoulder. He looked up at the sky and felt a deep connection to the creatures above. They had not only accepted him but had also accepted humanity's potential for compassion and courage. From that day on, the dragons remained near the outpost, watching over it. Their loyalty was not blind, but earned. They protected the humans, guided them, and shared the skies in ways that no one had imagined possible. The colony grew stronger, united by a bond that stretched beyond species, beyond fear, and into respect and trust. Ryan returned to his workshop later that night, snow curled at his feet, glowing softly in the dim light. He thought about the journey that had begun with a faint signal in the canyon, a life in danger, and a choice that could have been ignored. Instead, he had acted with courage and compassion, and it had changed the fate of everyone. He looked around the workshop at the scattered tools and quiet machines. They had helped him save lives before, but today, they had been witnesses to a story far greater. He smiled, knowing that humanity's true strength was not just in machines or weapons, but in the heart, in the willingness to protect and care. And as the stars shone over the outpost, the dragons glided silently above, loyal guardians of a human who had shown that one act of kindness could create a bond that no force could break. Ryan and Snow were no longer alone. They had gained friends, protectors, and allies who would watch over them forever. The story of the human mechanic and the baby albino dragon became a legend of the outpost, a tale of courage, trust, and loyalty that would be told for generations. Humanity had earned the respect of the dragons, and in return, they had gained guardians who soared through the skies, a reminder that compassion could change the universe. Ryan knelt beside Snow one last time that night, resting a hand on the glowing scales. "We did it," he whispered. Snow chirped, nuzzling his cheek, and together they looked up at the dragons circling the stars. The world was no longer the same, and for the first time, humanity truly felt the power of its heart.